Khan. Right, Shalom. Before I begin, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Ruach Kodash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, the men whom I've learned this truth from, and also Shalom to the elect. I'm the brother Shaquat from the branch of Great Millstone, Montreal. Back with another lesson, and this lesson that I'm going to be getting into is going to be a real brief and to the point lesson. I'm going into basically dismantling or going to show in the scriptures that hell is not a literal place, and this is one way, one angle that you could basically break apart the false doctrine of hell being real, literal place, right? So let me see. Matter of fact, because the modern day Christian church has completely taken out of context the understanding of what hell is, right? And even like as of now, recently, not only them, right? Not only the Christian church, but even other Israelite camps are basically going to show that, or are showing that they don't understand the scriptures, or ultimately the Lord is not dealing with them, right? Because they're teaching that, hell is a literal place. The lake of fire is not, America being on fire, things like that, right? So they're just not teaching the scriptures how they're supposed to be taught. Basically the same spirit as the Christian church, which there's no understanding in the Christian church because the spirit of the Lord is not there, But hell is not a real place according to the scriptures, and this is proof. This is one way of proving that it's not in the scriptures, right? So this is Deuteronomy 32 and verse 22, because there's more than one definition to that word hell depending on the context, right? And that's why the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, what they teach us to do is to basically be critical thinkers and look upwards, right? They push that heavily, the etymology of words and looking upwards, knowing what they mean, going into root words, right? Because when you do that, it gives you a better understanding of what's going on, a better grasp of what's going on, and what's being talked about, right? And you have to do that to get a better understanding of what's going on, all right? So dealing with hell, there's more than one definition depending on the context, right? So, right, for example, one definition, which is the one we're going to be going into, is SHAAHWAL in the Hebrew, Sheol, right? That's one word, or another word for hell. Hades, Gehenna, and then there's Tartaru, right? So dealing with the scriptures, there's 4 definitions that were held. Depending on the context, you basically filter in which one is which, and what I'm going to touch on today is going to be briefly is SHAAHWAL, or Sheol, that word, and what it means. Okay, so this is Deuteronomy 32 and verse 22. It says, "A fire is kindled in mine anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains," right? So setting on fire the foundations of the mountains is dealing with what? A future prophecy. And that mountain that's going to be set on fire It's basically the government of America, because another word for government is a mountain, right? That's why scriptures also refer to it as hill, which is a lower government, hills and mountains, and so on and so forth. All right. Also, when you deal with the G7 summit, I believe that word summit goes into a mountain. Matter of fact, just let me be sure. Summit meaning. Yep, summit. The highest point of a hill or mountain, right? A government. And then when you deal with the G7 summit, it says G7 summit meaning. The G7 summit is an annual meeting where leaders and policymakers from the 7 most advanced economies in the world, along with the European Union or EU, discuss global issues and collaborations on solutions, right? So G7 summit or G7 mountain, right? Because that word summit goes into mountain. So when the scriptures in Deuteronomy 32 and verse 22 is speaking about and set on fire the foundations of the mountains, that's dealing with the futuristic prophecy where America, which is that government or that mountain, is going to be put on fire. It's going to be lit up, right, by way of nuclear fire, and also fire from the chariots, right? So, but one thing I wanted to focus on here, it says, shall burn onto the lowest hell, right? The Lord's anger. When you look up that word hell in the blue letter, so yep, here we go. So it's Strong's H7585, and in the Hebrew the word is SHAAHWAL. SHAAHWAL. Alright, that's how you say it in the Hebrew. It says, let's look at it. Sheol, underworld, grave, hell, pit, the underworld, right? A Sheol in the Old Testament designation for the abode of the dead. A place of no return, without praise of the Most High, wicked sent there for punishment, righteous not abandoned to it, of the place of exile, of extreme degradation and sin, right? So to to make it clear, SHAAHWAL is speaking about the grave. Simple as that. It's speaking about the grave, but that's also interchangeable with the word hell. But in this context, it's speaking about underground, the grave. Simple as that, right? Because what happens when somebody dies, right? Their body decomposes, they get put 6 feet under, right? They get put in the earth. And the scriptures speak about the dust returning to the earth as it was. That's what it's speaking about. It's not speaking about a place where there's a river of fire, lava, and there's this man Satan that's ruling over the underworld, and you're tormented forever and ever for all eternity. No, that's not true. That's not real. This context of hell, or this word here, it's simply speaking about the grave, underground. Simple as that, right? And we're gonna further prove that. Right, and hell is also synonymous with something that the bad people or wicked people are sent to, and not people that are righteous, right? But matter of fact, let me keep going. Let me scroll down here to where else this word SHAAHWAL appears, right? So it says here, Strong's number 7585 matches the Hebrew word SHAAHWAL. It says which occurs 66 times and 64 verses in the WLC Hebrew. The WLC Hebrew, I believe that's the let's see, look it up real quick. I looked it up before, but I forgot. Paste. Westminster Lingard Codex, digital version of the Lingard Codex, one of the oldest complete manuscripts of Hebrew Bible, right? So, yeah, digital version, a digital transcript, right? So, let's go to where other verses where this word SHAAHWAL occurs. So it first occurs in Genesis 37 and verse 35. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, and he refused to be comforted. And he said, for I will go down into the grave unto my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. And this was dealing with, I believe, Joseph. What is it saying? And he knew it, and he said, it is my son's coat, and evil beasts have devoured him. Joseph is without. Yeah, so Joseph and Jacob. Right. This is when Jacob heard the news of Joseph, basically, or had thought that his son Joseph was dead, his youngest son, and he had a love for him. And what he said was, and all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him, and he refused to be comforted. So he was in heaviness, right? He was in heaviness, right? And another word for hell also, another definition for this word SHAAHWAL could also be a condition of hell, right? A condition of being shut out, right, in darkness. Because when you're underground, when you put or you dig a hole and you're underground, it's dark, right? There's no light, there's nothing, there's no life, it's just death. And that's what it feels like when you are in heavy spirits, when you're catching hell, all right? So that is also synonymous with condition, right? Matter of fact, before I go on, let me get this. In the book of Jonah, chapter 2, and I'm going to start at verse 1, it says, and Jonah prayed unto Yahweh his power out of the fish's belly. And he said, I cried by reason of mine affliction unto the Lord Yahweh. And he heard me. Out of the belly of hell cried I, and thou heardest my voice, right? So Jonah was in a condition of heaviness, a condition of hell, right? And when we go into that word hell, it should be SHAAHWAL. There you go, SHAAHWAL. So the same. Alright, so let's go back. So this word grave here, so Jacob said he was gonna die and go to the grave while being sad and not comforted because he heard the news of his son. Now he had died, but which he really didn't. Right. So when we look up that word grave, guess what shows up? SHAAHWAL. Again. Right. So let's go back. So that word grave and hell synonymous with one another. Damn. That's all out here. So let's go back. Another verse where that word H7585 appears, which is SHAAHWAL. There's also another account of the grave, which is, I believe, continuation. It says, and he said, my son shall not go down with me, for his brother is dead, and he's left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in which ye go, then ye shall bring my hairs with sorrow to the grave. Once again, grave. Right, Numbers 16 and verse 30. But the Lord make a new thing in the earth, open her mouth and swallow them up, and all that appertain unto them, and they go down quick into the pit. Then shall ye understand that these men have provoked the Lord. Right, so that word pit is also hell, because it's underground. Right, the grave, which is also synonymous with being put underground. Right, verse 33. Then all that apprehended to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. So pit and grave. Alright, so that's that word SHAAHWAL. One definition of the word hell, which means simply the grave, and it could also mean a condition, just like I proved with Jonah. So Lord willing, this was edifying, a quick lesson and to the point. I'm going to say, call hello, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Kakadash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders, the great most on, and shalom to the elect.